Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to what is today going to be the class review, as promised, of Glaceran Warlord. It's a class that essentially sets you back 2,500 ACs if you're doing it the cheap way, and it is going to be a B tier class. Overall, we're going for soloing at a B, support at a B, PvP a C, and farming is a D. It does have quite a nice little quirk we'll get onto when we look at the skills. However, if you're unsure how you can go about grabbing this class, if you go speak to Chili, you'll need to donate 10 lots of 250 ACs to get yourself 10 generosity coin tokens, and then you can grab it. I also believe the 5,000 AC gifting tier will include the class with it. Okay, as always, we are going to start with the skill breakdown. If this bit does not interest you, as always, the video has been timestamped. You can zoom straight on to when we look at some solo damage. Your auto attack, if Frozen Heart isn't active, it applies cryopathy to your target, reducing their damage resistance by 5% for 15 seconds, and it stacks up to 10. Then you have Frozen Heart. This one toggles Frozen Heart. While active, Frozen Heart reduces your damage resistance by 50%, causes all skills to crit, and changes the properties of your other skills. Use again to remove Frozen Heart, that one cannot miss. We then have Bitter Cold. So this one will stun your target for 1 second. If your Frozen Heart isn't active, applies Frigid to your target, reducing their crit chance by 20% for 10 seconds. However, if Frozen Heart is active, it will apply Cold Wave to your target, reducing their dodge by 20%. Then we have Glacier Crush. If Frozen Heart isn't active, applies Bone Chill to your target, reducing their haste and outgoing damage by 30% for 15 seconds. If Frozen Heart is active, applies Frozen Ferocity, increasing your hit chance by 20% and haste by 10% for 15 seconds. We then have Warcry. If Frozen Heart isn't active, heals you and up to 6 allies while applying Warlord's Rally, increasing crit chance and damage resistance by 25% and reducing mana cost by 50% for 20 seconds. However, if your Frozen Heart is active, it will heal you and applies Warcry, healing you over time and increasing your crit damage by 75% for 20 seconds. Now for the really important question, how does this class perform? We're starting with the base class, so if you're coming along a slightly lower level player or you have no forge enhancements whatsoever, you can see how this is likely to perform. It is okay. The DPS is fairly moderate, as you would expect with a B tier class. You're not going to be hitting absolutely ridiculous numbers, but you're going to be doing enough that when you're coming up against the majority of bosses in game, you're still going to be able to defeat them. There is fairly decent survivability with this class, such as being able to increase your damage resistance and also having that really strong heal. Believe it or not, the heal is actually the main perk to this class, especially when you look at it for that support aspect, because your skill 5 is able to hit up to 7 friendly targets, that's including yourself. However, when we already have classes such as Arch Paladin available to us, I'm not too sure when we're really going to be filtering this one in. One of the other big issues with the class is the cooldown time that you have. You haven't got overly much haste when you're using it, and as a result, unless you stick something like Dauntless on, which makes it just about bearable, you're not going to be going through getting too many skill cooldowns. The Glacier Crush skill can actually increase your haste by 10%, but if I'm being perfectly honest with you, that doesn't make a huge bit of difference. Like I say though, you do get fairly decent damage coming out of the class, and although it is fairly slow to refresh your skills, it is still something that could be worthwhile using if you are a lower level player or don't have kind of any end game solo type classes that you could use. And I guess if you really wanted to try and support a group, then you could go through and use it. If you're sat here wondering what sort of combos to use this class, I tend to go for a 3, 4 and 5 just to get the basic skills activated, and then go for a 2 and then use 3, 4 and 5 yet again to get the extra perks coming off of them. It's worth remembering that skill 2 literally just changes the mode that is used for 3, 4 and 5, so you can essentially see this class as having 3 bonus skills. It's not overly difficult to use, and you know what mode you're in because you can see the crystal floating above your head. That crystal means Frozen Heart is activated, so you'll be doing greater damage off of 3, 4 and 5. It's basically your DPS mode and time to go ham, and then if you take it off, you're slightly more supportive, taking on that kind of role. Speaking of support, I thought, you know what, let's go along to some slightly more basic ultra battles to see how this class gets on with supporting your group. Now, when I fought Ezreal, I did stupidly lock Frozen Heart. However, it worked out quite well as it locked the skill turned off, so it stayed in that more supportive element with skill 5 available to heal everyone. However, it did make the run a lot more tricky in my opinion. That was one of the least smooth Ezreal runs I ever had, and it was a fairly similar story down at the Warden. I'd say you're mostly critting somewhere between 10k to 15k if you're lucky, and that that's whilst you're being boosted by various other players as well. Over to PvP, however, and this one, maybe you could have a little bit of luck here. Maybe I could have been a little bit harsh giving it a C tier, but I didn't really see anything to tell me otherwise. Unless you come across someone with 2,000 health and can wipe them out, all the main PvP classes are generally going to batter you. I suppose if you can get your Frozen Heart active straight away, or potentially open into the room with it active, you could do some fairly high damage immediately off the bat before too many debuffs are applied. But you know, unless you're really thinking about that, it's probably better to stick to other things if you are someone who does PvP. Anyway folks, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do leave the video a like and of course subscribe, and I'll see you all again incredibly soon.